Hi, I'm David Kingsbury and I am a personal trainer. I'm best known for my work in the film industry. I've worked on films like The Wolverine, X-Men.
Great to speak to you today, Dave. What would you say are the main difficulties involved in training a film star such as Hugh Jackman?
You know, the main difficulty, which is actually what most people imagine is the main advantage, is actually time and a lack of time. So most people think that you have all the time in the world to do this type of work. And actually, it's very, very far from the truth. The schedules that you're working on are very tight, and the available time is very tight as well. So the film production companies, they don't plan training into the working day necessarily. Like sometimes they will, but more often than not they won't. So it's done in the actor's own time. And the actor don't have very much of their own time, especially if they're a very sort of busy and successful actor. And so what you'll find is that you end up having to do training sessions like ridiculously early in the morning or very late at night. And it's the only way that you can really fit it in because, they might be on set for 12, 14 hours a day, plus hair and makeup, plus press, plus whatever. And so finding the time to do it can be one of the biggest challenges. So it's about optimizing the limited time that you potentially have to make sure they get the best possible results.
I was wondering whether you could outline for us maybe a weekly training program that you would have used when working with Hugh Jackman in preparation for the X-Men films.
Yeah, so on any kind of films like that where the main goal is body composition, right? So whenever I'm working towards body composition, which is a lot of the films I do, it's not all of them. Some of the films are a bit more functional in we need them to be able to do this rather than we need them to be able to to look like this. But on the films where they need to look a certain way, on those types of films, the training will be, I'm not going to say traditional bodybuilding training because I think that's quite, there's a lot of scope to that, but it will be working those kind of classic hypertrophy rep ranges with some additional strength, lower end hypertrophy, upper end strength training as well to try and improve that. There'll be phases of training, right? So we'll do periods of hypertrophy with a calorie surplus, then we'll do periods of training with a calorie deficit for leaning out. All these kind of fairly standardized, periodized training programs. Typically, we'll be doing weights 4 times a week. Would be normally my kind of sweet spot in terms of training sessions. And so, if I was looking at a 4-day split, we might do 2 upper days, 2 lower days, for example. So on the lower days, quad, hammy, glute, focus, all of that, and then on the upper days, push and pull sessions, or might progress through to something where you might do a total body session, then a push-pull legs or something like this. Lots of scope for the different styles of training in there. Might look at doing 2 of the sessions a little bit heavier, and then the two of the sessions a little bit more high rep, a bit more a bit more mechanical tension, and then a bit more metabolic stress on the higher rep stuff. So on the heavier workouts, 6 to 8 rep ranges on a couple of movements potentially, right? And so that could be movements like a squat or a deadlift, if that form's good. But it could also be things like a Bulgarian split squat or a lunge, something compound that's a good movement there. But also, not shying away from the leg presses and the leg extensions, the hamstring curls as well, because you have to remember that if you're looking to push the muscles hard, sometimes it's quite good to do that in a more safe environment where you're using machines and things like that. So it would be, on those sessions, on the heavier ones, a bit more compound stuff. On the higher rep, potentially, a little bit more isolation focus as well. So yeah, like a lower body session there, it could be something like squats and RDLs, some walking lunges, some calves and abs, that type of setup. On a heavier upper body session, it could be like a barbell bench press and pull-ups with some seated rows and some weighted parallel dips or something along those lines. So it's good bit of chest and back, and then maybe with some curls and tricep push downs or something along those lines. For a higher rep leg session, something like a walking lunge it would be a really good option there. A leg press, again, a hamstring curl, a leg extension, those types of things would work. But also, so would a dumbbell front squat or a barbell front squat if the form is decent and allows for those. And then on the upper body sessions there, maybe an incline bench press, a single arm dumbbell row, a cable fly, these types of movements. Nothing like particularly out of the ordinary in terms of movements, but just, really focused exercises. Lots of sets on the same, on the same movements, and the consistency of doing the same movements repeatedly so you can actually improve with them. And then for things like bis and tris, it would be, maybe a dumbbell skull crusher and an incline dumbbell curl, or, something along those lines. Typically, on those types of sessions, it'd probably be around 6 to 8 movements per session. If it was 6, then it will be with, quite a decent rest period between. If it was more like an 8, there might be some kind of circuit style where you might do like 12 pull-ups straight into 12 curls, or something, something where it's challenging you in a slightly different way there. Typically, working with a muscle training frequency of twice per week. Sometimes if the film was a little bit more I'd say functional, there's more moving parts to it than just someone looking a certain way, then we might actually do like full body routines, for example. So, for example, a film like Assassin's Creed, where it was a combination of physique and also performance, we'd do we'd actually just do 3 total body resistance sessions, and then on the other days do some kind of boxing, cardio, those types of things as well. But for anything that's like physique based, which would be any of the kind of Wolverine or X-Men type things, it would be quite a traditional approach to weight training with low intensity cardio there, as if time allows to support the fat loss or the lean muscle gain as well. In those situations, not a huge amount of like hard interval training or HIIT training or high intensity sessions, just concentrated work on good quality movements with the right load, right rest periods, kind of classic muscle building training, just with well thought out programs so that you can see progress throughout the whole time.
That's obviously training covered, but how then do you structure an actor's diet?
People see the finished product in those films. They don't see the journey to get there. In those types of films, you tend to be given a rough date of when you're going to be working towards. It's definitely a case of trying to keep that muscle building as lean as possible. And in order to do that, typically, it's a case of really just keeping an eye on body fat levels and an eye on calorie levels and not letting it get out of hand. Like I do it. When I look to build muscle mass, I just eat, right? Because I don't care if I gain a bit of fat along the way. That's fine for me. And so I will overeat and I will gain fat, and I'm like, whatever, it's all good. But what you do is you just kind of have to try and stop that mentality of just like, I'm going to eat everything because I'm bulking, right? Which I think there's a lot of people that are guilty of that. It's like, right, I'm bulking, so I'm going to have like, 4 bacon sandwiches for breakfast. Do you know what I mean? It's like, yes, you can eat more than you need, but if you eat far more than you need, you're going to get, you're going to gain a lot of body fat along the way. So it's about eating, and it's about managing that energy calorie intake so that, yes, there is enough energy there for muscle building, but it's not so much that there's going to be loads left over to store body fat. And so it's just keeping an eye on weight, body fat levels, training intensity. If you've had a 2-week spell where your training's been poor, but yet you're still eating your bulking calories, you're going to get, you're going to gain a lot more body fat than if you're training really effectively, really hard, really efficiently. So it's managing those things to try and, prevent those, big gains in excess fat and trying to stop them before they happen, essentially, rather than like I do, look in the mirror and go, oh, okay, time to lean out then. It's just trying to keep an eye on that process so that the gains are as lean as possible. Whenever you're in a calorie surplus, it's likely that it's going to be accompanied with a certain amount of increase, increase in body fat. So as long as you're keeping that within check, and I always like to think of being just a few weeks away from being lean, right? Do you know what I mean? So like maybe being 3 or 4 weeks away from being really lean. And if you keep within that zone, it doesn't matter too much what gets thrown at them. You can go, all right, they pushed the shoot by 6 weeks, but we're good. We can do it in 6. What you don't want to happen is them to go, right, we pushed the shoot by 6 weeks, and you go, oh, we need 6 months. Do you know what I mean? You don't want that. So you have to keep it within a range the whole time so that you're prepared for any changes in schedule. I don't advocate any fad diets as such, but there are any kind of restrictive diet. There are certain benefits to because of the restrictive nature of it. So for a long time, I was a big fan of intermittent fasting, right? And I still quite like it. I do it sometimes, occasionally, and with intermittent fasting, the main reason it works is because it stops people eating badly at night, because they're cutting off their food at a certain point in time, so they're not going to overeat. So it brings down your total calories. If I'm trying to lean someone out, I am a fan of doing it with a slightly lower carbohydrate or a carb cycling approach. From a nutritional point of view, calories and macros are the most important thing for body composition, but you have to look at the overall impact of food quality as well, right? So yes, the emphasis there is on calories and macros, but we will try and do it predominantly with healthy whole foods as opposed to doing it with Pop-Tarts and donuts. Eggs, egg whites, chicken, fish, and those types of things, all very good sources. From a vegan point of view, there's lots of things on the market now. So like I get like protein bread and stuff like that, which is made from like pea protein or something like that, and amongst other things. And that's high protein. You can get things like protein bagels, things that are going to be quite convenient there. Also things like black bean spaghetti. You can get stuff like that, which is like 45 grams of protein per 100. It's like twice as much protein as chicken.
Finally then, Dave, who would you say is the strongest actor that you've ever trained?
I was training with Michael Fassbender on Assassin's Creed. We were like in the mountains in Spain somewhere, and there wasn't a proper gym setup. We got the set builders to rig us up to some scaffold dip stations and pull-up bars. And so we did like a classic GVT with jump volume, 10 sets of 10 reps for pull-ups and dips. And I trained with him for that one, and we both got the 100 dips. And he managed 100 pull-ups, which I didn't manage. So, that was one of the things that sort of stands out from my point of view. Is he got all 100, and I think I got about 84 or something like that. So that was pretty cool.